Who were some of the main artists and thinkers of the Renaissance? First, let's do a quick review on what the Renaissance was. Renaissance means rebirth in the French language and took place during the 14th, 15th, and 16th century. The Renaissance was a rebirth of classical learning and rediscovery in the areas of art, literature, and ideas in Europe, and was one of the most creative periods in human history. There were many important philosophers and artists during the Renaissance, but for now, let's just focus on three: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and William Shakespeare. So, who was Leonardo da Vinci? Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15, 1452, in the small town of Vinci, Italy. Little is known about his early life, but in 1466, at the age of 14, he was apprenticed, or sent to work for and learn from, one of the most successful artists of his day, Andrea de Sion, known as Verrocchio, and by the age of 22 he qualified as a master in the Guild of St. Luke, the guild of artists and doctors of medicine. Leonardo da Vinci created many masterpieces in his lifetime, but his most famous works of art include The Last Supper, which was painted for the monastery of Santa Maria delle Grazie, The Vitruvian Man, and most famously, the Mona Lisa. The Mona Lisa is the best known, most visited, most written about, most sung about work of art in the world. One of the reasons this painting is so revered is because of her facial expression, which leaves the viewer to wonder, what was the model thinking? Who was she, and why does she seem happy to some and appear sad to others? To this day, the Mona Lisa is one of the most visited paintings in the world. Leonardo died in France on May 2, 1519. There had never been another man born in this world who knew as much as Leonardo, not so much about painting, sculpture, and architecture, as that he was a very great philosopher. A quote from Francis I. Who was Michelangelo? Michelangelo, 23 years younger than Leonardo da Vinci, was born on March 6, 1475, in Caprice, near Arezzo, Tuscany, and was the first artist who was recognized during his lifetime. Michelangelo is the best documented artist in the 16th century, and has influenced so many areas of art development in the West. Together, Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci stood out as strong and mighty personalities with two completely opposing attitudes to art, yet with a bond of deep understanding between them. When Michelangelo was in his early 20s, he sculpted Pieta, which is now located in St. Peter's in the Vatican. This statue depicts the Virgin Mary as she weeps over the body of Jesus. Michelangelo himself picked out the block of marble used for this sculpture, and it was said that he could visualize the finished sculpture just by gazing at a block of stone. After this, he went back to Florence and completed his most famous sculpture, the Statue of David. This sculpture depicted the moment David decides to battle Goliath and was a symbol of Florentine freedom. Michelangelo was then called back to Rome in 1505 to work on a tomb for Pope Julius II, and worked on it for 40 years. Can you imagine working on the same project for 40 years? During the time he was working on the tomb, he completed the fresco on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This painting depicts scenes from the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible, the most famous of which is the creation of Adam. This painting took him 4 years to complete. Michelangelo to this day remains the only great sculptor of the Renaissance, and appreciation of Michelangelo's artistic mastery has endured for centuries. During the same year of Michelangelo's death, William Shakespeare was born on April 23, 1564. Though Shakespeare is most famous for the plays that he wrote, evidence shows that he mainly looked to poetry for enduring fame. Between 1593 and 1601, Shakespeare composed 154 sonnets, or poems, which were published in 1609 in a book called The Sonnets of Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote more than 30 plays in his lifetime, most famously Hamlet, Othello, and his most widely known play, Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is a story about star-crossed lovers who kill themselves for love. This tale has been told throughout the ages and has been adapted many times for stage, opera, musicals, and films. Shakespeare is widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language, and his plays are performed more often than those of any other playwright. So, who were some of the main artists and thinkers of the Renaissance? Leonardo da Vinci, who was famous for his brilliant mind and beautiful paintings, mainly The Last Supper, The Vitruvian Man, and the Mona Lisa. Michelangelo, who was most famous for sculpting Pieta, the statue of David, the tomb for Pope Julius II, and the painting on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. And last but not least is William Shakespeare, who was a famous playwright who wrote 154 sonnets and more than 30 plays in his lifetime, the most famous of which include Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, and Othello. All three of these artists had a major impact on the Renaissance and are still revered today for some of the most famous and influential thinkers and artists of all time.